Hello, my loves, and welcome back to the show. I am so grateful and so excited to have Asil on the podcast today. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know where to go. Actually, I do. I know exactly where to go. I had Asil at my home, maybe 2 months ago. And he put on this incredible event for my friends and I, this deeply transformational event that allowed us to recall past lives, drop wisdom on this life through his incredible ability to channel light beings. And I wanted to share Asil with you. I wanted to share his work with you and really give you an understanding and clarity around being human, because I think sometimes that can be a very confusing thing. And I want to share a story in this podcast of how Asil's work shifted my life radically in one area. And I don't even know, Asil, if you know this, but I'm excited to get into it. So without further ado, thank you for being here. This is such a gift.
Thank you so much, Samantha, for having me. And thank you to everyone that is listening here, maybe hearing my voice or seeing me the first time. It's a pleasure to meet you. Happy to share whatever I have to share.
You are a special being. Can you go back and share with us the story of how you realized you had these powers to channel beings, and how did that unlock for you? Where did you realize that? And let's just start there.
Great. So I think it somehow goes back to my early 20s. I've had some really interesting things when I was a child already, like seeing non-material beings like ghosts and spirits and this kind of stuff when I was little, and kind of having that suppressed by society. And then eventually something started to happen in my early 20s where I worked really hard to build a company. I was able to sell it in my early 20s. And then I realized, wow, I did everything that society and my parents and the world wanted from me. And I was feeling so empty, just like did not fulfill any part of me aside from, fulfilling their dreams or their unfulfilled dreams. And I realized there's got to be more to life than I realize. There's got to be more. There's so many questions I have that no one has answers to. Like, who am I really? And what am I? And why are we here? And where do I come from? Where am I going? Like, there's all these questions, big questions, right? And I started to go on a search, like many of us have done. This maybe the hero's journey, or whatever you want to call it, man's search for meaning, women's search for meaning. And I realized that there were so many different spiritual traditions and methods and lineages that had pieces of the puzzle. And I thought, let me just start diving into the most evolved, most intense, most authentic lineages and practices I can find. And so that's how this journey started. And it was coming from a place of, oh, I did everything that society told me to do, and I'm feeling unhappy. Where do I find happiness? Where do I find answers?
What were some of those things that you dove into, some of those modalities, some of those practices that reawakened you and allowed you to feel a deeper sense of enlightenment?
Well, enlightenment is a big word, so I'll just say the awakening process. It's a longer term process. I'd say some of the earliest ones were meditations, a meditation group in Austria, where I'm from, that I joined. And they also happened to be water fasters and breatharians. And, it was like a really interesting entry point into spirituality. And then in New York and upstate, I went to a lot of Native American gatherings and sweat lodges. And eventually I got invited into medicine circles, POT circles, Native American church meetings. And I started to also work with a Chinese Taoist master in like the inner Qigong, the Neigong practices, as well as yogic practices. So started to a lot of these different things. And there was a bit of a piece of the answer everywhere. A piece of the answer is everywhere. And they may have different paradigms and different ways of looking at it,
Mm.
different, a friend of mine calls it different cosmology, different understanding of reality, different understanding of creation. But yet there was a lot of overlapping pieces. And that's where I try to find the answers, where the overlapping pieces are.
Mm.
And doing a lot of, I was still running a company at that time, and I continued the journey with specifically plant medicines. I spent a lot of time in South America. And the journey just started to bring me closer and closer into a world of non-material existence, where I realized, wow, I feel so much more comfortable in this world than I'm feeling in this physical world. The
Mm-hmm.
physical world feels, to some degree, fairly difficult to navigate and understand.
Mm-hmm.
And this
Yeah.
human body that we are in, it's like a machine. You're like operating it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not me, but I'm in it in some ways. Some people call it the meat suit, you know. And I started to get a lot more answers from different levels of consciousness and non-material beings. And there was a particular event about 5 years ago where I was holding a retreat. And in deep meditation, I had these light beings appear in a way that I've never experienced it before. It was like this high-pitched sound in my ears, and all these insects and birds, everything stopped. Everything was super quiet. It was like this dome of silence, this dome of reverence that had arrived. And these light beings started to talk to me, and they said, "You're finally ready. We can now work with you." And I didn't know what that meant. So I said, "Well, who are you?" And the first one said, "My name is Emmanuel, and I will be guiding you through this process." And I thought, who is Emmanuel? I don't know. I don't know who Emmanuel is. Is this like a saint, Spanish saint or something like that? So I had to Google it, and it turns out it's like an angelic being. And I thought, hold on, am I really going crazy now? Like, angelic beings are talking to me? Is this just like another imaginary aspect of my mind trying to make sense of my reality? So for a while, I kept that secret, but they kept on coming back, and they kept on offering support, and I agreed to participate in their um, plan for humanity, in their gift to humanity.
Mm. Wow. So I want to share my personal experience. I had the privilege to work with you as you channeled these beings. Did
Mm-hmm.
you channel Emmanuel, or was
Yes.
it
So I channel quite often. I channel Raphael, and
Raphael?
Manuel often does like the questions and answers more on a human level.
Yeah.
And then there is this greater collective consciousness um, that is referred to as Elohim.
Mm. Raphael, I think, came through in my session with you.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So throughout my entire life, I've had this really interesting reaction to walking down the street. It's so odd. I'd be walking down the street, and all of a sudden I would see someone coming towards me, and my body would freeze, and it does freeze. And I go into this terror, this feeling of like, oh my God, I'm going to die. Someone's going to kill me. And that's been an experience that I've had throughout my entire life, like as long as I can remember being like really young and having that experience. And, I went to therapy and all sorts of things to try and figure it out. And I always ask my mom, like, Mom, what happened to me as a child? Why am I having this experience as an adult? And she's like, I have no idea, Sam, but this has been happening to you for a while now. So when I worked with you and you were channeling, I had the opportunity of asking, and I don't even know if your logical mind remembers this, but I had
I
the
don't
opportunity.
remember it at all, by the way. I'm sorry. But it's even more interesting for me. I've been hearing this the first time.
Yeah, because yeah, I know what it's like. I know what it's like to go into those states and to channel and sort of come to and go, I have no idea what I said. And so I asked Raphael, I said, what happened to me? Why do I experience this felt sense of terror in my system? And what came through was, in the 1400s, you were a slave in Italy and you were killed in the streets. And so I'm like, oh my God, here I am blaming my mom. She wasn't even alive yet.
Mm.
It was a past life trauma. And I worked with you right after I read the book, Many Lives, Many Masters, where the author talks about past lives. And before I read that book, I honestly didn't subscribe to the whole notion of past lives. I didn't really give it much thought. And I just sort of, I'm like, well, if it wasn't in this life, then it doesn't affect you. And I now know how untrue that is for me and in my experience. And since having that session with you and having context over the emotionality that comes through my body, it's created a lot of healing, a lot of healing. So thank you so much. And I think the work that you do in the world is soothing for the system because it opens us up to other narratives, other possibilities, and other perspectives for why we are the way that we are. And so often we can plaster these stories on ourselves, such as I'm weak, or I don't have the strength, or I'm not powerful, or God, I'm not good enough for that, or whatever it is. And what you offer and what the guides bring through is context to some of those traumas that we experience in this life. So I'm curious to know, what is it? What is something that you can share with humans listening to this podcast that are struggling with, whether it's anxiety or uncertainty or depression or mental illness or whatever it is? How can you speak to them to know that there is more that meets the eye? What would your message be?
Yeah. So the human experience is really peculiar and it's very complex and it's incredibly beautiful. There's so many facets to it, and there's so many journeys that can be had within the human experience. Experiencing emotions, experiencing relationships, experiencing love, experiencing the depths of the ego and identities that we have taken on in this lifetime. And what I've perceived is happening for souls that are just on this expansion and continuous like expansion of their consciousness, they start to feel and they start to process not just this lifetime, but also the past lifetimes, especially if they haven't been processed properly. So there is, most importantly is, do not escape this lifetime. That's like the first one to look at, right? A lot of the things that we're feeling when it comes to, and I'll say this from a non-medical perspective, I'm not a medical professional. When we feel anxiety, when we feel different forms of depression or over emotionality, then it's almost a representation of a piece of trauma, a piece of experience that hasn't been fully experienced, that hasn't been fully felt, and it remains in our conscious, subconscious, and unconscious, as well as in our body, in our emotional body, or in our energetic body. And what it wants to do, it wants to resolve itself. It wants to get us to a place of realization, a greater understanding of what has occurred, right? So what we then do is we walk in life and we create and recreate realities and relationships that are almost playing out these ancient traumas of the past. It could be in this lifetime or a past lifetime. Just like the way you would walk down the street and you would get this feeling and you would not be understanding, it's like, why am I getting this feeling? It's because a part of you wants to realize what has occurred, feel it, and transmute it and come to a greater realization. So the journey, the rabbit hole is deep when you start asking, okay, why am I feeling this way? Or why am I reacting this way? Then you start to look into, who am I? Why am I this person? And how did I become this person in the first place? How is it helping me in the world, in my mission in the world? How is it helping others in their mission in the world? And how is it not serving me? And how is it not serving others?
Do you feel like most of suffering in the human experience is unnecessary?
So I'll make a clear separation between pain and suffering. So pain I perceive as more of a trigger or as an impulse, right? Pain is almost like an impulse. Okay, now your body has a reaction to pain. Your emotional body has a reaction to pain. Your mental body has a reaction to pain. Even your energetic body has a reaction to pain. And that comes in different shapes and forms. Suffering is when we start to get into a place of making meaning of the pain. And we get stuck in that loop of the meaning. I'm feeling this pain because I don't deserve, or I'm not lovable, or the world hates me, or I'm a victim, or I'm a villain, right? Like there's all these meanings that are attached to the pain, which then go into this suffering cycle. So while pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Does that make sense?
Totally.
And now
Oh, go ahead.
the mastery is in understanding how these two parts are separate and trying to learn to slowly detach from that suffering, to experience and watch the pain and what kind of learnings and realizations the pain might bring along without the meanings that we attach to it. I'm not saying that's easy. I'm just saying that's one of the processes that we can do to separate from suffering.
Why do some people choose to suffer? Why is there that addiction to suffering?
Yeah. Well, it's always a cost and benefit analysis. Even in this experience.
Going back to business terms.
It really is.
Totally. I get
If
it. I
you
get
think
it.
about it, there is some sort of benefit that we get on a psychological, on an emotional level by attaching suffering to our case, or by the mind attaching suffering to our case. So if we were to feel just the pain, if we were to let all of that emotional pain arise, or the physical pain, just really be fully present with it for a moment, we could possibly start seeing it from multiple perspectives and a higher perspective, and maybe learn something from that pain and let it move through. If we repress it, if we resist it, the pain persists. And a persistent pain loops into a suffering cycle. And because we need to make sense of that pain, the mind wants to make sense of it. Oh, I'm not lovable, or whatever it is, the meanings that we've attached to it, maybe even like in early childhood. So these cycles are teachers. Even suffering is a teacher, and even fear is a teacher.
Mm.
And if you start to see it from that perspective, rather than suffering is evil, or fear is evil, or anger is evil, and you start to understand, oh, wow, these are just parts of me that are in some ways protecting me from fully feeling what
Mm.
needs to be felt.
Mm.
And maybe feeling it at that point when it occurred was so intense that you needed a protector.
Mhm.
Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
100%. 100%. How can we are recording this in 2020, and I think the world is just in a chronic state of fear and worry. It's like our nervous systems are just geared into that vibration, and they're just chronically there for many reasons. So I'm curious to know, in your perspective, how is that a gift? How is that a teacher? And how do we ultimately liberate ourselves from that chronic go with the fear and worry?
Well, I always wonder is, what do we get out of worrying? And what do I get out of fear? Right? They both use up energy. They both use up space in our minds, and they use up a lot of attention and take away from our presence. And it does not really change the circumstance. That's the fascinating thing about worry and fear. Out of fear comes often like, I manage my environment in order not to feel the fear as much. I start to control my environment and my circumstances, right? So society has given us a certain sense of safety, quote unquote, to not feel the fears of discomfort, the fears of uncertainty. And suddenly we're faced with uncertainty. Not even society can help us, right? And this is, oh my God, it's scary. Uncertainty is scary.
Mhm.
The unknown is scary. And suddenly our perception of reality, the way we are used to a certain reality, is crumbling.
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And so, well, I think the in my work with the guides, they speak a lot about making time for silence and presence, uh, of the mind as well as the heart as well as the body, and going into greater perspectives, greater um, expansion of our consciousness, to be able to perceive the situation from a bigger perspective. Still there?
Oh, I
Uh,
think we had a
can you?
little. I think we had a little internet blip there. Hang on one second.
Yes, here we go. We're
Okay,
back.
pick it up from the guide's greater perspective. Get
Yes.
it.
So they are suggesting, like, in these altered states that we get to in deep meditation, we are able to perceive it from a higher perspective as well as from a close-up perspective, a dualistic and a non-dualistic perspective. And when we're able to do both, then even though these perspectives might be contradictory, we get a sense of freedom. We get a sense of liberation. Because the worries and fears only make sense if you look at it from one perspective, right? You lose sight of all the other perspectives. You look at it from one perspective, and then you are stuck in that viewpoint alongside with the pain and the suffering and the fear and the worries.
Mm.
But start to look at it from multiple perspectives, like, okay, well, how is society gaining from this experience? And I'm not dismissing all the people that are in pain and suffering and dying. But how is all of human consciousness evolving by this experience? What is happening on a global level when fear is coming to surface? When we suddenly have to deal with discomfort,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm.
That's the way I look at it. And it has helped me. It has helped a lot of people on this journey.
Discomfort in my experience has been the very thing that liberates me. And it was the very thing that I was most afraid of. And I ran away from my entire life, running away from it in the form of food addiction, food restriction, body image obsession, exercise addiction, work addiction, chronically busy. It's like I would do, and I would clean a fucking toilet so that I didn't have to feel uncomfortable, you know?
Whole thing. Guilty
And
as
what,
charged. Me too.
yeah. And what I'm realizing is settling into the discomfort, settling into the queasiness, into the in between state where I don't know what's going to happen and I'm not sure the next step. That is where the ultimate liberation is.
A lot of growth happens when we are allowing ourselves to sit in the discomfort and observe what happens arises within us. Because a lot of the fears that come from the space of discomfort are old fears, or maybe fears of our previous generations we've taken on from our ancestors, or maybe from past lives. This is what the discomfort initiates. It's like, hey, look at this stuff that is coming up within you. Look at this stuff that's coming up within all of society. Here is an opportunity to transform this.
How can we increase our capacity to feel that? I think sometimes when people go into that state of discomfort, it's scary, it's terrifying. They don't know if they can actually emotionally handle it. It feels, like, I can't be here. There's a running away, there's an avoidance from. What can we create? What stories can we create to allow us to settle into that vibration?
Hmm. Well, the methods of distraction only work so far, as you have experienced yourself and as I have experienced myself. Overworking, overeating, quick pleasures. And by the way, I'm not saying there is anything wrong with it. I'm just saying there are coping mechanisms to deal with discomfort. And we've become geniuses and masters in coping mechanisms. Does that make sense?
Totally. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm a master in coping mechanisms. I can cope with a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
But when the impulse, when the pain and the discomfort is so grand and so intense, no distractive force can help you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then
Absolutely.
we come to a place of like, oh, I need to surrender to this. There's no other way than to surrender to it. Can I sit with the discomfort? Can I allow the observation of my mind, the observation of my heart to take place? Can I feel what is happening inside of me in this very present moment? What are the greatest fears that my mind is projecting?
Mm.
Right? And what does my reality look like in the current moment when I allow all of this to come up? And is it my fear, or is it the fear of my parents? Is it the fear of society? Is it my fear of what I wanted, my expectations of the future that may no longer be?
Mm.
Is it my fear of the expectations of others?
Here's what I think is really interesting. There's so much talk about mindset and what we focus on and like mindset work and think positive. Well, when you're in the state of beingness, of feeling, you ain't thinking positive. You know what I'm saying? You're in it. So how do we balance that dichotomy? Because there's one body of work that's like, come on, just be positive. Let's go. You got this. Let's go. And then there's this other, and I would say that's like personal development. And then there's like spiritual development, which was like the embodiment and the moving through and the breaking down and the feeling through.
Yeah.
How do we educate on that piece? Because I think people really get stuck there. I think they resist the embodiment work because they're like, well, if I go there, then I'm going to get stuck there because whatever I focus on, I attract, and maybe I'll stay like this forever. What's your advice on that?
My advice on that is, first of all, bypassing the pain will not solve it, because bypassing it and suppressing it and resisting it will potentially just perpetuate it. And it will come back in many different flavors. You know the stories of people that go into a relationship and they keep on getting the same type of partner over and over and over again. And they think it's about the partner, but it's really not, because they are the common denominator in the whole story.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So um, what we, what I believe is an important strategy is really to get into a place of quiet and really assign time for inner contemplation and inner reflection. What is happening inside of me? What's coming up as an emotional state? What is coming up as a mental state? What is my mind trying to tell me? What is my mind trying to do? And how am I feeling it in my body? Where is it moving and where is it not moving? Right? So all of these, and there is, a million different methods to do this, by the way, as you know. But this conscious time for observation allows for something to occur in our system. And it is observation leads to different perspectives, and different perspectives eventually lead to a realization. And these realizations are sometimes very, very simple. They could be something like, you are loved as you are. Or it could be some sort of realization that occurs as in, you will be fine no matter what. Or it could be something like, your essence is perfect and your life is perfect, even if you may not see it that way. So these realizations occur once we start to see all of the different perspectives. And I'm not saying just, set your mind on it and just like go for like, life is perfect, life is perfect, life is perfect, because that can get into a space of bypassing or almost like delusion. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So sit with it, sit with the discomfort, sit with the pain, sit with the emotions that are arising, and see how they are starting to morph and maybe change. And maybe something arises from it that is more a grander perspective of realization. It does really lift the charge, because there is a charge, right? It lifts the charge. That's when the liberation happens.
Oh, so good. I often teach on the concept that we are our own drug. We are the medicine that we need, the medicine that our nervous systems need. And you just spoke to that so beautifully. It's like when we invite in this conscious presence and let it flood our bodies with in this agendaless space. The only agenda is to be and to feel and to just immerse ourselves in the frequency of discomfort. That in and of itself is healing. There is actually no doingness in that. There's no action plan or checklist that we need to embark on in order to create this transformation in our system. And I think there's a huge misconception between self-care and self-love. So self-care being, I'm going to do my meditations, and I'm going to do my walk on the beach, and I'm going to listen to my podcast, and I'm going to drink lots of water and have my electrolytes and my whatever it is. Self-care. That's all stuff, caring for the self. And self-love, it is this intimacy, this depth, this breaking apart and coming together simultaneously, all together at the same time, that we experience when we commit to the path of transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's lacking action in the best way possible.
Mm. Very well said. Very beautifully said. And I want to just add one piece to it.
Mm.
It's really much easier to love others in their totality and even have compassion for all their wounds and all the ways that they may carry shadows. It's
Mm.
much harder to do that for yourself, to love all aspects of yourself that are wounded, that may have um, carried trauma over in this lifetime or many lifetimes before, and also love your imperfection. This is where self-love gets really, challenged. Can I love all parts of me equally?
Yeah.
The parts that are hard to love, the parts that are judging other people, can I love that in
Mm.
me?
What's our resistance to that? Like, why do we struggle to love our broken parts?
Because we've learned to judge them.
Mm.
We've learned to judge them, um, sometimes by our previous generations, sometimes by society, by being judged. We've learned to judge ourselves. We've learned to judge others, good or bad. And when we judge something not good, then we're in this dualistic frame set, and we cannot love the totality of our being and the way it is. But once we allow love and compassion to move into those pieces, the wounded parts, the traumatized parts, then they can actually start to transform. So it's not by just the desire of transformation that transformation occurs, but once you actually let go of the desire to transform, but you infuse it with love, that's when it starts to transform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Love absolutely does heal. And I remember I used to fight this a lot because I had the mind of a champion. I'm like, it has to be hard. Surely I'm not going to heal my body and heal all of this archaic wounding and societal conditioning simply just through loving myself. That sounds crazy. That seems so easy.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that the path of less efforting was, in fact, the path of the greatest healing.
Mm.
And it's an interesting concept to wrap our head around, because I approach personal development from a very like forceful, pushing my way. Let's go, let's uproot, let's make a list of everything I suck at, and then let's plan and let's do an action plan and figure out how I can change. And I think being a competitive dancer and having a father that was a professional hockey player and a very successful, mom in business, I had that champion mindset. It was reflected to me everywhere. So it's like, that's the way I dealt with problems. Just work harder, just strategize, just create a plan. And there's a piece of that I absolutely love. And I think it's how I've been able to build a lot of what I have today. There's a distortion of it when I am trying to prove myself or prove myself to other people. So I have to keep that part in check. But when it came to healing, spiritual healing, spiritual development, I applied those same principles of how I built a business to how I did that. And I really got myself into a bit of a pickle, because I'm like, I forced it. I pushed it. I'm like, we got a timeline to heal, Asil. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm not healed by January 31st at 12 o'clock PM, it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
So it's beautiful to teach and to bring the facts that it's actually compassion that creates the most amount of healing. It's actually the slowness, the beingness, the softness. The softness is what creates the transformation. What do you focus on daily to ensure that your vessel is just sharpened for what you do? Because it's, you hold a lot of energy for many people.
Mm-hmm. So, well, I'd say, first of all, there are certain things that I do that I believe everyone could benefit from. And then there are certain things I do that are very particular and specific to the role that I play, which is the vessel of divine energy and this particular light that comes through. So I'm developed as like this vessel through which a lot of energy streams through. And I don't say that's everyone else's journey. So there's particular things that I have to do on a regular basis with the guides where I'm being worked on my energy body and so on. So I can hold even more energy and more light to go and move through me. On a regular basis, taking care of the body, physical exercise, eating well, drinking enough. And if you need supplements, go for the most optimal way to infuse your body so that this vessel, this physical vessel, has actually everything that it can in order to provide a healthy life, a healthy temple for your consciousness and for your emotional body. That's the first, like, it's super important and super simple, but we forget about it. Or we do it in order to look good, or we do it in order because our coach told us, right? But once you understand it, like how it impacts you, if you're not really healthy and aligned in your physical form, then you're like, okay, I really need to do this. There's no way around it. Nature is super important. Regular time on a daily basis in nature, no matter how the weather is.
I'm looking out the window and you're wherever you are right now, and I'm actively missing San Diego as I sit here in New Jersey in the middle of winter.
Exactly. But there is beauty even in winter,
Oh, yeah, we're in LBI, Long Beach Island right now, and it is actually beautiful. It is just freezing cold.
Yes. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is really observing in the emotional body. Like, what is the emotional body doing? What kind of feelings are arising? And what kind of reactions do I have to certain situations? And are these reactions maybe improportionate to the current situation? And then I look a little bit closer and like, what is this really bringing up for me? And that could be some pain or some fear, or it could be some sort of old trauma. And then I look how it's connected to my mind, my memories, and the mental constructs that have been established. So meditation becomes a really important aspect of my daily practice, that quiet space. For some people, journaling is incredibly valuable and very, very important to express the stream of consciousness that is coming through. And also observing your current reality, your relationships, the quality of your relationships, and the quality of your thoughts, the quality of your presence. How present are you with someone right now, and how present are you with yourself?
My body just dropped when you said that. I was like, there's like this sinking, there's this sinkingness that happens when, when I attune to it, when I name it, of like, how present am I in this moment with this being, with myself? It's so cool, And I'm so grateful that I have a community of people around me who value presence to the degree that I do. And when you came to my home and we had that, it was like a little retreat, right? There's what 12 of us or something. It was just beautiful. And communicating with those humans who value presence and value that type of connection is just, it's life-giving.
Yeah.
It's so life-giving.
what I wanted to share also is like it makes an incredible difference to have community and to have supporters that can hold space for you as you're going through your transformational journey.
Mm,
And this holding space is almost like observing in an almost neutral state, no matter what comes up for you,
mm,
allowing that which is coming up for you to be okay and to be held with love as it's being realized by your consciousness.
mm,
And so that's actually what we do in our courses when we are working to develop individuals and healers and practitioners towards becoming, vessels for humanity. We
mm,
call them pillars of light.
mm,
We do that because they need to go through the full extent and the full spectrum of their human experience. And so we have to hold space for them as they do that.
mm.
And it's a powerful journey. I mean, overall, the human experience is a powerful journey. But dedicating your life to supporting humanity and being in service
Mm.
is wow. I can't believe that. I can't see how there's a greater journey than that, at least for me.
I agree with you. I agree with you. I feel grateful that I get to we have two certification programs. We have on the Hungry for Happiness side a 10-month coaching program, and then we have a breathwork facilitator program to teach people how to become facilitators. And in those, I just witness these humans coming in with an agenda to serve humanity, to raise consciousness, to embark on the greatest soul adventure, fulfilling their soul's curriculum. And it's beautiful because I just giggle to myself as I welcome these people. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're in for. Like when you decide to dedicate yourself to serving humanity, the universe is like, what up? Like, let me hook this person up. Like I feel so ridiculously supported in my quest of these missions because like that is my only agenda. That's why I wake up every single morning. I'm like, I want to reduce suffering and increase human consciousness through the power of breathwork and coaching. Done. Like I am so obsessed with doing that. And you and I were having this conversation where when you first started doing this, it's like you didn't have a business plan. You didn't know what you were doing. You just kept one step in front of the other. Let's follow the intelligence. Let's follow the divine calling. Let's keep leaning into desire. And the universe shows up in incredible ways.
It really does. It really does. And when we choose to be in service, then we are also choosing to continuously develop and evolve. There's no way around it.
Mm-hmm.
And when these practitioners decide to join one of our courses, then they're in for a treat because they're going to get dismantled and taken apart and put back together.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just, oh, we're going to hand you here's like the patch, or here's like um, the badge of honor to be in
Mm-hmm.
service. Here's a certification. No, it's like you're going to have to go through the the deepest depths of your being in order to become a vessel of service.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah,
It's the only way to do it.
yeah.
I think it's very obvious when we have someone regurgitating content that they learned in a course versus the embodiment of the work. It's such a different transmission coming through. So thank you for holding your work to that high level. I so appreciate that because there's not enough of it, unfortunately, but hopefully you're going to balance it out.
That's what we're trying.
Oh, you know
What?
what?
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah. I just wanted to share that, you know, it started off as like the guides basically saying, okay, after a year and a half of them working on me in my, bedroom and me not doing any other things, any projects, any life, um, they basically said, okay, now you can start to work on some individuals. And I started working on a couple people, and that led to a couple more people. That now we have thousands of people going through our courses
Mm,
around the world.
mm,
And it has really transformed my life and other people's lives. What I'm trying to say is when you trust and when you continue step by step, And when you hold that energy of transformation in your being, the embodiment of it, then it creates the space and the inspiration and the motivation and the love for others to go through it.
Mm, so beautiful. So, so, so beautiful. I love that so much. I could talk to you for another 3 hours on this podcast.
Uh,
You know what we should
yeah.
do next time?
Yes,
Would you be open to channeling one of the beings next time?
totally.
Let's do
Of
it.
course, I would be.
Okay. Let's do that. I'd love to have you back on, and I'd love to dig into there's just so much here for you and I to go into. And I know my audience is going to eat this up. So, in the meantime, before we have you back on, where can people find you to engage with you and learn more about the amazing Asil?
Well, there's a couple ways. We have public channelings every first and second Saturday of the month.
Which are amazing, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you. And then we have a month-long course that we do that's basically geared for people that just want to go deeper, and they want to go deeper into this work. They want to go deeper into their own level of service in the world, deeper into their own light and into the capacity of holding this light. And one of those courses is starting on January 5th, sorry. And all of that information can be found on our website, asil.to. It's asil.to. And yeah, under courses, you'll see what we're up to. And there is a variety of, like, from donation based to paid courses. There's a whole spectrum of things that people can engage with. There is something there for everyone.
I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here, sharing
Mm.
your energy, sharing your gifts, sharing your light. I'm so grateful that I crossed paths with you this year. And I know you and I are going to journey through this life together. And I'm excited for the next time I get to see you.
Oh man, I'm excited too, Samantha. And it makes my human mind and my heart blossom when I see that someone that I have touched is incredibly more in the world, um, with a bigger capacity, with more love, and with more presence, just the way you are. And that my work had some level of impact on your work and touches many, many people through that. So we have these ripple effects on other people, and we can do incredible of a difference. We can make that difference in the world.
I love that. Thank you so much, Asil. I appreciate you. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. And I know this conversation is going to resonate with a lot of my community because they're woke and they're hungry. They're hungry to learn. They're hungry for more. They're hungry to dive deeper into the path of ascension, truly. So thank you for being a guide on that path. And I'm so excited to have you back on the show.
Thank you,
See you.
Samantha.